Okay, good morning and welcome everybody to the Clackmannanshire Borough Council. As usual, we'll start with the protocol. All visitors must sign into the visitor book at the entrance to Craigs. This includes the council staff from other buildings. There is no planned fire evacuation drill or alarm test today. If the alarm is activated during the visit, you must exit the building immediately. Council officers will direct you to the nearest fire and exit and will escort visitors to the building fire assembly point beside the Silver Man at the top of the Parliament Walk. Craig staff should report to the floor's assembly point. You should remain at the assembly point until directed to reoccupy the building and only re-enter once the fire marshal is advised it's safe to do so. Please do not attempt to leave the site by vehicle until cleared to do so by the fire marshal to ensure access routes are kept clear for all emergency vehicles. Please note that this is a public meeting and that members of the public may be in attendance. The meeting will be recorded by the clerk and published online for public viewing. Taking of photographs, including screenshots, audio or video recordings, are not permitted during the meetings unless with express permission as a convener. The members attending virtually, we don't have any members attending virtually this morning, do we? So, members attending virtually wish to speak on any point, indicate by clicking the raise your hand button. Members in the chamber should also raise their hand and will bring you in at an appropriate time. If members have not been able to access all papers for the meeting, please indicate. Okay, thanks. I will hear each of the items set out in the agenda and invite the officer to present the paper. Members will then have the opportunity to ask questions before we proceed to debate and decisions. We start off this morning with apologies. We've got apologies from Councillor Holden and Councillor Benny. And just on that point, for colleagues of Councillor Benny, we're aware that she's had a fall and a bit of an injury and is on the road to recovery at the moment. Just passing the best regards from all here in the chambers this morning. Do you have any declarations of interest for any items on the agenda this morning? Councillor Coyne.
One. Yes, I'm going to declare an interest that when we are discussing, thank you. When we're discussing matters to do with the IJB and the HSPC, I want to declare that I am a temporary board member of the IJB.
And you're substitute for Councillor Benny and
Councillor Benny, that's right.
Okay, that's noted. Okay.
Plans to be before it's not. I'm not really sure that we need to, but
Councillor Coyne obviously feels more comfortable given that notice this morning, start the meeting, that's perfectly fine. Okay, so we go to the minutes of the previous meeting. As usual, we'll go through them page by page. Page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, 13, page 14, page 15. We're happy to approve those minutes? Okay. So the first item on the agenda is the reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete paper, and Murray's going to take us through that this morning. Thanks, Murray.
Morning, Council. Thanks, Chair. So this morning's paper, this is obviously an update paper and report based on the decision by Council in June. So obviously the report updates members on engagement that's taking place with the 11 owners in the 3 evacuated blocks that we have in Tillicooty. Obviously the report outlines that officers and the Council's commitment is still in ensuring and getting agreement from the owners, either for voluntary repair or sale, to minimise the ongoing costs and the loss of income to the authority. The report obviously sets out the next stage of engagement and the implications against the agreed timeframe. The paper highlights obviously that 2 properties have been voluntarily sold to the Council within that period, the keys being received last week. 2 further owners have expressed their willingness to sell. One owner, we are engaging directly with their lender. Another owner has pitched their value way beyond what the agreed Council parameters were. 2 owners at the High Street block intimated their willingness to progress with repairs, which means that now officers have commenced works with the contractor to mobilise that block to progress the repair programme, hopefully before Christmas. Obviously, there was a submission received last night where that owner has indicated another preference, so we'll have to engage directly with that other owner before considering other action in relation to that matter. Obviously, the paper then indicates that obviously that we felt and still feel that we've made a fair settlement offer to owners either for voluntary sale and or for the repair mechanism in terms of owners being able to take that work forward. We're not suggesting, other than a few minor tweaks to that proposal, that council alter or deviate from that proposal as was referenced in June. Obviously, there was communication received last night in relation to the letter indicates in relation to Patrick Street and Chappelle Crescent, where clearly we have signatures from 5 of the 8 owners within those blocks, indicating a preference for another solution. Clearly, in terms of standing orders and financial regulations, this would need to be an owner-led solution. Clearly, this solution, though, can work in tandem and concurrently with the proposals within the paper, and we could welcome back owners coming back with some proposals. However, we would stress that officers' concerns in relation to this matter are clearly indicated at 4.8 and 4.9 of the report. In terms of a twin track approach, in terms of owners obtaining costs, clearly as we're progressing works on High Street, routinely we would be looking to move on to Park Street as the following block, given the close proximity to the High Street block in terms of moving the scaffolding. So we would ideally be requiring the owners to revert back to us by mid-January at the latest in terms of Park Street block and Chappelle Crescent by no later than early March. Clearly, as the report highlights in those sections that I've referenced, we would need some significant assurance around warranties, guarantees, etc. in relation to this product. The letter also last night referred to a change in evaluation. It might have alluded to a change of valuation. That was incorrect, or if it alluded to a change of valuation. There was an uplift in a voluntary offer settlement made to one owner, but the RICS valuation remains as was the position as agreed with the owner back in June. So I thought that would just be helpful clarification this morning. Obviously, the paper is outlined as tabled with the recommendations as listed, and obviously happy to take any further questions this morning.
Okay, thanks, Murray. The paper's now open to questions. Councillor Forson.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, there was you mentioned the correspondence received yesterday on behalf of a number of the owners, and part of the request was to defer a decision on the paper today. Is there any need to defer a decision on the paper today to allow what the owners have requested to take place?
No, and we actually, it's unfortunate that perhaps there wasn't engagement with ourselves in terms of the letter. The paper's actually asking for a deferment of the decision relating to a matter that's already been discussed and agreed by council, which was the June decision in terms of McConnell's taking forward the roof works. So there's no need for council to delay or postpone or not take this paper forward, because the processes I've outlined there of introduction can work concurrently. Owners can work to receive, obtain quotes and obtain necessary permissions during the period at which we're working towards now.
So the decision that was taken in June would fall under the 6-month rule on standing order, so therefore couldn't overcome that decision today.
Yeah, obviously Lee's here to assist council, but yeah, the decision made in June was obviously to progress with the repair. It was outlined in that paper the works and obviously the movement in terms of the capital budget that was required to facilitate McConnell's as our current roofing contractor to take forward those works, and to obviously then works in the background have then happened to facilitate that in terms of updated purchase orders, changes that Derek's then had to make with the framework arrangement to make sure that that work and budget was available to take forward the work. So yeah, if council was to review that decision, it would be reviewing a whole host of other decisions alongside it.
Thank you. Councillor McTaggart, to be followed by Councillor Rennie.
Thanks, Chair. Murray, thanks for that report. Have been any trials of this alternative method, and do we have any historic data that would support the use of this and its effectiveness, hours and processes, etc. Do we have any historic background on this at all?
As we understand it, although this product we believe has been used across a particular range of concrete type products, in terms of its use in terms of rack, as we understand, there has only been one application in terms of its use against rack, which was on a network rail facility down in England, I believe in York. So we understand it's only been used once in an industrial setting, not in a domestic setting. And obviously I would refer back to the comments that obviously we've referenced in section 4.8, 4.9 around the guarantees, etc., relating to the product.
Yeah. Are there any ongoing or proposed trials of this method? Thanks.
Chair, yourself, thanks, Councillor. As Murray's outlined, we're only aware of one occasion where it's actually been used for rack, and that's been in an industrial depot. We were informed when we met with a representative of the company and the rack owners group that there is a planned pilot. I think the pilot is Mr. Chowdhury's daughter's home, which is subject to rack problems as well. That's the only planned pilot that I'm aware of in a domestic setting, but I don't believe that's actually started or commenced or is beyond any structural considerations at this moment in time.
Does any insight?
No.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Rennie?
So just, I mean, Councillor Forson actually asked one of the questions I was going to ask about deferment, but just to be clear, we are not being asked to change any decisions here based on any correspondence. So we're being asked for the go-ahead for this to progress. And my question really is, would further delay be detrimental? I think, you know, essentially the owners have been waiting a substantial amount of time to have this progressed. And I'm just wondering if any further delay would be negative rather than, I know you might not want to answer that, but negative rather than positive. And it would make more sense to progress and let officers have the ability to take this through.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Rennie. And obviously, that's where really the time frame comes from, is obviously now that we've obviously came to June Council and obviously we had outlined the works in terms of how this would progress, the lead-in period that's required to get a block underway, and then once a block is obviously underway with the scaffolding up and the rack's been removed, that we would then turn our attention immediately to the next block. So that's where the sort of time frame comes in, as well as the contractual time frame that we have left within this contract opportunity, which ends at the end of August next year. So there's a tight time frame to make sure that we're on site with these blocks. In terms of delays, obviously, clearly as a landlord, we obviously want to work with our shared owners and blocks. So yeah, if they want to go ahead and progress and seek quotations, obviously we do have our concerns, as Kevin's outlined as well, and it's outlined in the report. But clearly we will hear and listen to the owners when they do come back. And clearly we will indicate to them that they need to satisfy some of these concerns that we do have. Obviously the owners themselves, they can make their own judgment and decision in terms of how they might feel in terms of delay. But clearly, later on in the agenda, we do have a report in terms of our SHR assurance statement, where the regulator is obviously clearly asking council about progress that we're making. It's obviously for the benefit of tenants. There's a loss of income for these blocks in terms of lost rental income, lost opportunity for homeless families to be housed in them. So the regulator's asking us about what's the council's position and
Sorry. So really, I think it sounds from what you're saying that it's a positive to have officers having the authority to move forward to make sure this is safe and the right solution for the tenants.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Thanks. It was just on, obviously, that letter that we received yesterday, because it kind of states that this thing that has been proposed by the group, that it wouldn't need roof replacement, but my understanding is that the buildings that we were talking about all would need to have roof replacements, so that would have to go ahead as well as if they did find a way, or if this was a way, the roofs would still have to be replaced, so that would be an additional cost onto what if this proposal that they're kind of looking at. Is that right?
Well, yes, is the straightforward answer. The 3 blocks that have been evacuated, all 3 of those roofs are in need of replacement. They're beyond the timescale for repair now, replacement, sorry. We thought that was well established within the group, given some of the correspondence that officers have received in relation to that matter. But clearly, and that's as a reference to Councillor Rennie there, we will need to make sure that we engage back with these owners in relation to what they're actually asking for, because clearly they'll need to be getting quotations in relation to replacement of the roof, as well as the work that they've indicated in this letter. Clearly, our report indicates that the rack is only one element of our proposal and our costs. Obviously, McConnell's, they've not worked this out to the nth degree, because they've given up their contract price in terms of the roof replacement, and obviously when they're replacing the roof, they're going to section by section remove the rack from each room in the block of flats. So clearly, as the progression works in terms of High Street, we'll get a closer price in terms of how much the actual rack removal actually is per block. So it's that cost effect which the owners are looking to see if they can get better value on, because obviously the roof replacement will then come over and above that.
Okay, any other questions?
Back up just for a second on that point, thanks. So we've established that actually the fact that we have recognised contractors who are able to respond to this quickly and offer a best value price for the owners as well as the council. If this goes beyond the August date, and if these contractors are no longer within the boundaries of this contract, is there likely to be a much higher cost associated with the works if it's left beyond that time?
That's a difficult question to answer, but in theory, there is a risk that the cost could alter if we go past the timelines indicated in the report, and we can't instigate or put a contract offer out to the current contractor in line with the framework that they've got currently with the contractor. We will need, as a council, overall at that stage, to have already been back to the market, either via the framework that we're currently using or via another mechanism to seek a replacement roofing contractor, because obviously we've got roofing works across our estate. So those prices, as we know from other contracts recently, there's been inflation applied to various contracts, so those prices could alter and could go up, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Convener. Murray, just a quick question back to the regrid system. I assume that regrid are not, they would have to go through a procurement processes to be approved to be a contractor to work in these properties. So I'm just wondering, one of the reasons for going with this is a statement that this could expedite the whole process. But if they're not an approved contractor at the moment, there's a whole heap of procurement hurdles to get over before they get there, and also they would need to show that their product is safe and fit to use in these premises. Is that correct?
Yes, to an extent. So as outlined in my introduction, if we were the lead as a council, there is no mechanism for us to take that work forward at present. We have a current roofing contractor, McConnell's, through the SPA framework. If we as a council were to take this forward, we would need to be part of the opportunity thereafter, August. So that would then, going back to Councillor Ryan's point, increase would still be sitting here almost a year from now before we've actually even commenced any works. In terms of the owners, if they were keen, the owners themselves in line, because we have done work with shared owners before, owners themselves would then be taking the liability and the risk for taking those works forward. But clearly, as the majority owner in these blocks, we would need to have the satisfaction that it was the right solution and it wasn't going to materially impact on the building. For example, the contractor was going to cause more harm than good, for example, before we give the go-ahead. And substantially, we'd need to ensure that the product was viable, was insurance backed, because we couldn't then pay for a product, pay for a repair work that was going to lead to either substandard work or potentially the block not being insured, or worst of all, building control not authorising or certifying the work to allow residents to return.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Coyne.
Thanks, Convener. Murray, just in terms of the freedom to move forward on this, does each block have to be considered separately from a point of view of management of the process? That's part one of the question. Part two is, for each block, is there a sort of drag-along system that works here, that if a majority of owners make decision A, they can drag along the unwilling parties in an agreement to repair things?
So, first point, yes, under the way that the legislation is set up just now under the 2004 Act, if the title deeds are silent, obviously there's mechanisms under the Tenants Act 2004 to take forward work to an individual block. So that relates to an individual block, not a series of blocks coming together. In relation to question two, I think obviously that's where the real interest comes in terms of the High Street block. So at present, we've obviously purchased another 2 properties, increasing our foothold in that. The other owner is very keen to progress works. We thought the other owner was until recently keen as well, because that was the expression she gave to myself and my colleague Kim at the meetings, that she wanted to progress with the repair. Obviously, she signed a declaration last night indicating slightly different preference, so we'll need to engage separately with her individually. But given that there's 9-1 in favour, obviously that discussion might be slightly different from a situation where you might 64 or whatever. So in terms of that point, yeah, if there's a groundswell potentially, then yes, it's more likely that it would make it easier to progress matters in relation to that, as opposed to a 64 or a 70-30 type scenario.
So basically what I understand from that is that while you would prefer to move forward with the unanimity in terms of the way out of this, if the excrement hits the fan, basically, you can force it through.
Yeah, well, yes is the straightforward answer to that. Obviously, I can't possibly use the same language that you've indicated to myself. But of course, the report does indicate that clearly, as a statutory body, we do have other responsibilities in relation to these properties, as well as being a landlord. So clearly, our fundamental responsibilities over the safety and security of these blocks, so that they don't come crumbling down or they don't affect the wider population of the community. So if there was wider concerns that the blocks were starting to show signs that they might be subject to slightly further deterioration or whatever, we might have to take other action under some of our other powers as opposed to some of the landlord powers.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Do you want to come back in?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Murray, just going back to High Street then, so in section 4.2 we talk about how the High Street is progressing due to the ongoing engagement with the residents and the owners in there. And it says this includes a full certified structural engineering design, etc., etc. Does the letter last night signed by one of the residents indicating a view to doing something a little different, does that change anything then? Does that then, or are we still progressing with High Street?
I've only briefly spoke to Lee about this. So obviously, on the back of our initial discussions with the 2 other owners in that block who indicated to Kim and I that we're keen to progress with repairs, McConnell's have started the commencement, the lead-in period. Clearly, we will have discussions with this owner indicating that it's a substantial majority, 9-1, in favour of progressing with the repairs for that block, and obviously make sure that they understand fully the implications of perhaps not progressed at this stage, what that might mean, and look at the other options that we have. Obviously, the council paper in June outlined, as well as this paper, about the establishment of the Owners Association. Clearly, we hope that that is not necessarily needing to be the case within that block, given our majority ownership and the majority view in terms of the block, in terms of progressing that repair. But we will need to obviously, after this meeting, individually engage with that owner. I wouldn't say that it changes our decision to progress with that, given the weight of our ownership and the spirit of feeling from the other owner within that block to progress matters.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, thanks, Murray. Councillor McTaggart to move the paper.
Thanks, Chair. Before I start with this paper, can I just make a wee announcement that our housing team have been shortlisted in the Scottish Housing Awards 2025, shortlisted for Housing Team of the Year. So I just wanted to make everybody aware, because I don't think that's been shared, that the team are on the shortlist. So just like to commend the team for getting on in the shortlist, which is obviously an accolade in itself. However, fingers crossed, middle of November, we will have the Housing Team of the Year. Thank you for that. So, the paper goes into great detail about historic and current issues around the RAC-affected properties, so I'll not go over that again. However, I must emphasise the need to bring this situation to a successful conclusion. As the paper details, there are a few owners for whom a solution is still to be found. Since the beginning of this process, the Council has used an immense amount of time and valuable resources in an effort to offer a fair and equitable solution to everybody who has been adversely affected by the presence of RAC in their homes. The full costs of this are yet uncalculated, as the cost associated officer time is yet to be fully determined. I think I can speak for all of us in this chamber, and indeed all of the officers involved, when I say that we empathise fully with those affected by this awful situation. But we must find a way that allows everyone, including this council, to move on from this. As outlined in the report, significant progress has been achieved in addressing the issues related to RAC-affected properties. Some challenges have been successfully overcome, resulting in a favourable outcome for several individuals, council tenants and owners alike, reflecting positive engagement and resolution in those cases. Nevertheless, there remains a few owners whose concerns have not yet been satisfied. These outstanding matters are still under consideration, and discussions continue in an effort to find acceptable solutions. The officers involved are dedicated to reaching agreement that uphold fairness for all individuals, while also ensuring the financial stability and integrity of the council is maintained throughout this process. The paper also talks about the possibility of seeking authority under the legal route of compulsory purchase order. I must assure members that this measure is by no means the preferred option. I'll emphasise that. This is a last resort option, but in my opinion, a necessary one if we are to prevent this situation from dragging on for many more months, if not years, during which time the buildings will deteriorate further. The paper also outlines the full effect that a CPO would have on all affected parties. While the option of progressing works through a formal vote under the Tenement Scotland Act 2004 remains legally available, it must be noted that it also carries a risk of further delays, increased pressure on service delivery, potential increased costs, future budgetary impact on the housing revenue account, and the very real prospect of an inflated cost pressure on individuals. This has been a terrible time for all concerned, and I understand that, but we must find a way forward. So I'd urge members to support the recommendations in this paper. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison to second.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah. As has already been said, and many times in this chamber, it has been a terrible time for the owners and tenants of the RAC affected properties. And I'm sure we all agree that we do need to move on to a resolution to the issue that works for everyone. Unfortunately, it is a hugely complex situation, whether that's engineering-wise, legal matters, and this has inevitably delayed the process. The RAC issue does need to be progressed, not only for those owners and residents who have been decanted from their homes, but also so that officers within the housing team can get back to focusing on the other 5,000 tenancies across Clackmannanshire that they are actually responsible for. There is a real need for the council to bring public sector properties back into the service to help ease the considerable pressure being experienced with availability of houses. I am glad to see that in the High Street block, the process of repairs has commenced with Murray's explanation earlier. It's good to see that that is happening. It should also be noted that the UK and Scottish Government's position have not changed on this, and there will be no financial assistance for RAC properties. And with that in mind, I think it's we need to explain that we have kept the repairs as low as possible due to the ongoing work within the council with one of our existing contractors that has allowed us to divert them from work already ongoing to these RAC affected properties. This paper is being brought forward to give options on how we can move this forward with the next stages of the work on the remaining RAC affected properties. And by agreeing this paper, I hope that these changes will allow us to move the repairs forward. So I'm happy to second.
Okay, thank you. The paper is now open for debate. Anybody wish to debate the paper? Councillor Errol?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As everyone has said here this morning, this has dragged on for quite some considerable time, and it must have been an awful strain on the tenants, both in their physical health and probably their mental health as well, because it must have been one heck of a situation to find himself in. I think that we're talking here about moving the situation on. I think we really must move the situation on. We can't let it drag on any longer. We have covered all the bases. Everyone has been trying to reach a common decision on this. It was said earlier on there that everyone has been trying to make a decision. And we're trying to please everyone. Well, God's been trying to do that for thousands of years. He can't get that right. So I think, yes, we must move this situation on. So I agree. Please support this paper.
Okay, thank you. Any other contributions to the debate? Councillor Bilsilly?
Thank you, Chair. As one of the local members for Tillicountry, I think I share, as all elected members, we recognise the stress that owners and tenants are faced with the situation over RAC. However, I believe this paper does provide the framework for a way forward. And indeed, in the questions that I fielded at the Tillicountry Community Council meeting, I believe that the council has absolutely done its best in terms of representing owners and tenants to try and find a solution. And indeed, it's my view, if it wasn't for the council, we wouldn't actually be as far ahead as we are with some of these particular issues. Although I fully acknowledge that each owner has their own individual issues to face, but I do believe this paper provides the framework in terms of how we can move forward, particularly since we already have contractors engaged, and any further delay would just cause further delivery problems and raise questions about how we resolve it. So, for the third time, I support the framework going forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Klein?
Thank you. It's an absolute imperative that this matter is brought to a speedy conclusion for the sake of everybody and all parties involved. And I think what we're being asked to approve in the paper, the 5 things we're being asked to approve, don't do anything to hinder that. A couple of them are quite complementary to the process, facilitating it financially for residents. And therefore, there's no reason at all to think that this paper should either be suspended or not supported. it's imperative that we do that.
Okay, thank you. There are no other contributions. Councillor McTaggart, do you want an opportunity to sum up?
No, thanks, Chair.
Okay, what we've been asked to agree 2-1 is to note the outcomes of the actions taken by officers following approval at June Council, which is laid out in section 4, and to approve the issues from 2.2 through to 2.6 on the front page of that paper. We're happy to approve. Okay, thank you. Just quickly, my apologies. I was meant to mention at the start of the meeting that Councillor McFuckey had indicated that he was coming in today, he was going to be late, so just to record the fact in a minute that he has passed in that message to us. Item 5, the Integrated Joint Board Budget Paper, and Nicky's going to take us through that. Thanks.
Thank you, Convener. Good morning, councillors. Paper presented to Council today provides an update on the report previously considered by Council in March this year. Additionally, it provides an interim update on the work progress being made with regards to the dispute resolution process. The paper reiterates and updates some of the previously presented financial information submitted to Council to facilitate your decision making today. This paper has been prepared now, given that both the Council and Integrated Budget unaudited 2024-25 outturns are available. The additional information this progress provides allows the Council to revisit the 2024-25 request for an additional contribution to the integrated budget as a minimum. The paper sets out the outturn position for the integrated budget and the impact this has at partner level and in respect of meeting an additional voting shares contribution to the integrated budget. Council will note that there has been a significant movement in the outturn since March when the original request was received. This means that the Clackmannanshire locality outturn is significantly less than previously forecast. As a consequence, the Council has asked if it wishes to make an additional contribution of approximately £417,000 to meet a voting shares contribution to the overspend, in line with that contribution proposed by both NHS Forth Valley and Stirling Council. Council is also asked whether or not this additional contribution will require to be repaid in full or in part. Request in respect of 2025-26 is also reconsidered in the paper. Given the volatility of the integrated budget forecasts, especially for Clackmannanshire, as well as the as yet unquantified impact of savings and ongoing uncertainty re-pressures for both the integrated and council budgets, it is recommended that Council continues to monitor the position closely in respect of each budget to allow for a fuller and more reliable consideration of affordability and risk factors prior to quantifying any potential additional financial contributions for 2025-26. Finally, the paper sets out an update on the 4 elements of the dispute resolution process and how that's progressing. Council is particularly asked to note the positive manner in which this is being progressed and that a formal outcome will need to be reported to both councils and NHS Forth Valley in respect of the outcome of this work in due course. I'm happy to take any questions on the paper.
Okay, thanks, Nicky. Paper's now open to questions. Councillor Law.
Can you just confirm for me the overspend for 24-25 for all partners?
It's captured in the table, so it's the draft outturn is captured in the final line of table 2, which would be for Clackmannanshire Council, £1.622 million overspend, for Stirling Council a £3.073 million overspend, and for NHS Forth Valley a £2.281 million overspend.
And does that mean though, when we're doing our vote this year, we will be contributing more than what our overspend is?
Yes, it's slightly more than the equivalent of our outturn position. So you'll recall that there are 3 options that the CFO had presented to us previously. So one of the options would be just to repay your actual overspend. The voting shares contribution, however, has been the precedent over a number of years, and that's why that's recommended.
are we the only partner that will be doing the voting shares be given more than what our overspend was?
No. So it's a relatively small difference between our actual outturn position and the voting shares contribution. It's a significantly greater difference for the contribution for health for NHS Forth Valley.
And we have done this before, haven't we? That where we've given the voting share, even though our overspend, or I think at one point actually we had an underspend, and we still gave money. In your opinion, would that mean that Clackmannanshire has been a good partner in the health and social care IGB budget? Are you allowed to give that opinion? I'm looking at the convener.
I think what I would say in response to that is that we have always tried to make sure that we ensure the resilience and delivery of services for communities in Clackmannanshire. We've done that by trying to be a good and positive partner in the partnership. I would say that has absolutely been the case across the partnership, and you'll see at varying points over the whole life cycle of the partnership to date. At different points, different partners have had overspends and underspends, as you highlight, and we have always tried to support the overall position of the integrated budget.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Coyne?
Thanks, Kenny. We resolved at the previous meeting to submit an additional sum of money, which at that point was 1.3 million, on the basis that it be repaid. My understanding from listening to IJB is that they do not accept that conditions can be attached to monies paid in on that basis. So there seems to be a tension there. And however, they have received £4 million from NHS Forth Valley, which they are considering to be an advance. Is that an option that's open to us then to rephrase this as an advance?
So there's a little bit of apples and pears, I think, in the two examples. So in terms of the requirement or not for the monies to be repaid, the proposal that is contained in the report to council is entirely in line with the integration scheme. It's clearly detailed as an option within the integration scheme, and prior to include it in the paper, Joanna and I had discussed that as an option. So I know that in other partnerships that has happened. I also recognise and acknowledge the comments you make about within our board setting. There has been some concern raised about that. What I would say is that it's for us to offer the money, so the board can decide whether or not it wishes to accept that.
Thank you. Councillor Benny?
Just a clarification, Nikki, in terms of the repayment of the amount and to be treated as a loan, and I understand it would be repaid in 26, 27. Is there not a thought that if the remediation was put in place, the recovery plan, that by 2026, 27 would be in a fully different position in the IJB, where there might be the opportunity for there to be money available rather than overspent? So the 2026-7 suggested repayment date was what was originally the proposal when we looked back in March. Obviously, what we've not seen at the moment, as you're aware through the board, is the impact of the savings. As you know, as ever with a savings plan, some things travel more quickly, some things go more slowly. That work will be feeding through to the board in terms of its financial position in the next wee while. So we'll get a clearer impact in terms of the extent to that is positively or otherwise impacting outturn. At this point in time, the CFO has advised that it would be prudent for the board to look for more savings, which would suggest it's maybe slightly at odds with the view that it might be a more favourable position. What I would say is, in terms of the repayment, one of the things that occurs to me is that it is quite important to understand how the delivery plan is actually delivering in practice. So at the moment, we've said 26, 27, and it's what obviously we've asked council to do. One thing that might be worth thinking about is whether or not we need to see how the savings flow through to look at, could that be open to a bit of negotiation, that so council can agree that it should be repaid, but the timescale may be open to negotiation on the basis of falling and aligning with the delivery plan to give the officers a chance to progress the savings that need to be made. So that may be another consideration. Yes, and I know Councillor Forson has raised this before, in view of the fact that we ended up with an overspend when the previous recovery plan for that financial year that it related to was fairly delayed in its progress. We couldn't have anticipated as a council, could we, that we were going to end up in an overspend position at certain points through that year?
I would suggest that there was a difference between the two financial years from my point of view, councillor. I think you could see certainly between quarter 2 and quarter 3 that it was very likely there was going to be an overspend for 24-25. I think that what I would say now is that there is far more structure and due diligence work has been performed around the delivery plan, which probably increases the degree of confidence in the delivery of savings. I think previously there'd probably not been as much focus on as structured a plan. There were individual proposals that were there, but I think the board wasn't perhaps monitoring those in quite the same way as the delivery plan framework now provides the opportunity to do.
Thank you, Councillor Forson.
I just wanted to clarify. I know that there was comments made from some other board members about Clackmannanshire Council giving extra funding as a loan. Can I just clarify that the scheme of integration does allow for a loan to be made, and that this is in practice in other IGBs?
Yeah, absolutely in line with the response to Councillor Coyne's earlier question. That is absolutely the case. It's provided for in the integration scheme and has been a practice across other partnerships as well. And I know that our own chief officer has been familiar with that arrangement in a previous role as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Coyne.
As a follow-up, excuse me, as a follow-up to that, then there is in the wings waiting to be agreed by all parties another agreement at IGB set up, which we haven't signed up to, right? Is that condition that the Lord has that survived into this new agreement?
Sorry for looking slightly puzzled, councillor. I was just trying to work out which decision was in the wings. So we're talking about the integration scheme.
Yeah.
So the work on the integration scheme, as you know, formed part of the dispute that this council lodged. That what has happened with that so far is there have been formal meetings of the monitoring officers as the legal reps across the partnership. Good progress has been there in terms of advancing some changes to the provisions that this council previously wasn't signed up to. In terms of the voting shares and other aspects around the financial provisions within the integration scheme, that is the subject of a yet to happen discussion. So we've had some informal feedback, but it wouldn't be appropriate to share that obviously in a public forum, but that will be in the near future. So we're anticipating there'll be a revised integration scheme comes back. What I would say is that we had a very clear steer from elected members in terms of those provisions that were acceptable or otherwise previously. So obviously that is the position that this council is promoting in those discussions.
Councillor Rennie.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify if we can come to an agreement today, which everybody's happy with, would that expedite both the production of the financial accounts for Clackmannanshire and the IJB?
If I flipped it, I would certainly say that a lack of agreement would hinder it. It may not be the only issue, and I'm not aware from the IJB side, but certainly, resolving this, I'm sure, would be of assistance to the CFO. He's nodding away.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Okay, thank you. Nicky. Councillor Law to move the paper. The paper at 2.2 asks us to make a decision in relation to that element. It would be helpful if you could spell out what the proposal is from you in terms of moving the paper when you're moving it. Thanks.
Just from my speech out all the window. I'll hopefully do that. As outlined in our meeting in March 2025, Clackmannanshire Council faced a significant decision regarding our contribution to the IGB budget. At that time, after careful consideration of our financial position, the options presented, we chose to commit 1.327 million. This decision was not taken lightly, but made in recognition of the financial constraints we were facing as a council, and with a clear understanding of our responsibility to balance the needs of our residents with the resources available to us. Since then, our financial position has now allowed us the ability to contribute an additional amount, as reflected in the updated recommendation before us today. Specifically, we propose to allocate a further 417, I can't say that actually, 400, I'll just do 0.417 million for 24-25, bringing our total addition support to 1.744 million, in line with the vote and share precedent. However, I must emphasise that while we are able to make this increased contribution, is only possible due to the unique circumstances we find ourselves in as a council. Our overall financial outlook remains challenging, and we continue to face significant pressures across all council services. For this reason, I believe it's both reasonable and necessary that this additional contribution is treated as a loan to be repaid to the council by the IJB in 26-27. Although I do also agree with the comments from the Chief Exec that if we can go into discussions regarding the budget for the IGB, if it doesn't look like the recovery plan is completely on track, but hopefully it will be. This approach ensures that we can contribute to continue to support the delivery of vital health and social care services in the short term, while also safeguarding the council's ability to provide the full range of services that our residents rely on. Our decisions we make for Clackmannanshire, for those who depend on health and social care services, but also those who rely on schools, our roads and our community facilities and all the other services we provide. I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the constructive way in which the dispute process has been handled and the process that has been made so far. I also welcome the review of the strategic commissioning plan, and that we recognise the importance of aligning strategy with delivery. It's my hope that as this work progresses, the IGB will provide our officers with the data and information to keep council informed of the ongoing work to achieve a balanced budget for 25-26. We need to be ensuring that resources are targeted where they are needed most, and that all our partners can make informed decisions. We are committed to working constructively with our partners to resolve the current financial challenges and to ensure the long-term sustainability of the Health and Social Care Partnership, but we also must act responsibly to protect the interests of all Clackmannanshire residents for now and in the future. I hope, has that addressed all the, or should I also say that we will look at our financial position or the budget, the IGB budget's position at the end of the financial year regarding any other contribution, but hopefully that won't be because of the work that's going on in the recovery plan.
Yep, no, okay, thank you for that. Councillor Forson to second.
Thanks, Convener. I'm happy to second the recommendations before council today. I think it's a strong, balanced approach in very challenging financial circumstances, and I think it should be supported for good reason. Firstly, it's important to recognise the scale of the challenge we face. The IGB is projecting a significant overspend for 24-25, and there does remain a material funding gap for 25-26. But equally, we must recognise that partners across the Health and Social Care Partnership have already been working hard to identify savings to curb the expenditure growth and to bring forward efficiencies. The dispute resolution process between Clackmannanshire and Stirling Councils and NHS Forth Valley is ongoing, and progress is being made, and that gives confidence that this paper's proposals are grounded in realistic collaborative assumptions. So the proposal to allocate 0.417 million from our 24-25 surplus, in addition to the 1.327 million already assumed, to meet the IJB's overspend on a voting share basis is principled and it's consistent with precedent. The approach outlined ensures that the quantum of any contribution is aligned with a historic voting share option, which is 50% NHS Forth Valley, 25% Stirling and 25% Clackmannanshire, and that this preserves fairness between partners. The paper also recommends that we monitor closely the evolving position during 25-26 and that the Section 95 officer be delegated authority to make non-material adjustments. And I think that this approach gives us flexibility whilst protecting accountability. And by proposing that the 24-25 contribution should be repaid in 26-27, the paper shows that we are not simply writing this off as an amount, but treating it as a potential loan rather than a permanent subsidy. This is fiscally prudent and is entirely in line with the scheme of integration. I know that some may worry that by agreeing the vote and share approach that we are subsidising our partners. However, this has been our approach in previous years, so it is consistent and entirely within the spirit of partnership that we wish to advocate. In conclusion, I believe this paper strikes the right balance. It recognises the urgency of stabilising the IGB finances, but it does so in a fair and precedent-based way. It retains safeguards and monitoring, and it supports the ongoing resolution of the structural challenges. So I hope that we can support the recommendations today.
Okay, thank you. Paper's now open for debate. Councillor Redding.
Yeah, I mean, as I said at the beginning, I don't feel there is a conflict of interest. I feel I'm representing the council when I'm in council meetings and representing the IGB when I'm there. But certainly, I think this is a really sensible proposal. I think we need to move things forward. We're in a situation where we need to expedite the audit for organisations and get the accounts finalised. That's really important. And I think it's a very sensible solution. I'm happy to agree all the elements that are put forward. I think looking at it, I'm very confident with the management within the IGB that there will be really good measures put in place for recovery. So we may be in a good position moving forward to recover any money that's put forward just now. So happy to approve the suggestions and recommendations that are put forward.
Thank you. Councillor Coyne.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, I'm happy to support the paper for all the reasons said around the table. However, I just looking forward, I think that voting share is not necessarily the fairest way to do this, and that's something we should consider perhaps in the future, because it escapes culpability in that kind of distribution. And therefore, I think maybe that's, even though it's been a precedent, I don't think we should stick to it necessarily. But that apart, I support the paper.
Okay, thank you. Any other contributions to the debate? Councillor, do you feel the opportunity? Need the opportunity to sum up? Okay, subject to the position outlined by the mover of the paper at 2-2, are we happy to approve the paper? Yes. And through. So, for clarity, that was in full rather than part. Are we content with that proposal? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Item 6, be the future update, sustainable transport, and Lorraine's going to take us through that. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Good morning, councillors. I'm pleased to present this paper, which focuses on one of the key priority themes of our Be the Future transformation programme, sustainable transport. As the paper sets out, in collaboration with the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, officers have developed a comprehensive framework to address both the immediate and long-term transport needs across Clackmannanshire. This work has drawn on best practice from across Scotland and beyond, and has involved a wide range of partners, including colleagues from within the council within transport, economic development, family wellbeing partnership and the Wellbeing Hub, as well as Scottish Government, NHS Forth Valley, Sistrans and the third sector. Thanks to this collaborative effort, we've already seen some tangible progress. For example, we've strengthened connections with NHS Forth Valley. There's a volunteer driver scheme now operational, and this initiative is helping residents access employment opportunities, attend medical appointments and reduce social isolation. We've also had interest from Transport Scotland and McGill's to be involved in these developments as we move forward. While the report highlights some urgent actions, such as the need for multi-use vehicles and better door-to-door transport, the overarching goal has been to create a more connected and sustainable approach, identifying local, actionable steps that can be taken forward. I'd also like to acknowledge that the previous work by our transport team, who commissioned Mott MacDonald to look at the demand responsive transport and multi-use vehicle, that's been taken into consideration as we've moved forward. So instead of looking at that in isolation, we brought that report into this piece of work and it's been taken forward. So this work itself is an integral part of the overall framework. I understand that there's currently an issue with accessing the Mott MacDonald report online, and we're working to resolve this and we'll ensure it's published on the transport pages as soon as possible. The output of our work with the Wellbeing Economy Alliance is an action plan, which we're asking Council today to consider and approve. The short-term actions are outlined in paragraph 310 of the report, and if approved, officers will then begin implementation immediately, supported by a delivery plan and resource allocation. I'm joined today by Madam Muirhead, who led the work with the steering group, and Stuart Cullen from the transport team. And I'd just like to thank them. This has been quite a challenging piece of work to bring everybody and manage expectations, and they've worked really hard to bring the plan in front of you today. We're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lorraine. People's now open to questions. Councillor Forson.
Yeah, thanks. And Lorraine, thanks for the piece of work. I know it's not been easy to put together, but I think it's a good example of the cross service work. I was at Alloa Community Council meeting on Tuesday night, and it won't surprise officers to know that there is some questions, particularly around about the Mott MacDonald report not working. And it won't surprise you to think that they think that there's some conspiracy that we're not willing to share the document. And that's probably compounded a wee bit, because I know that one of the members had did an FOI asking to see the Mott MacDonald report, and we refused that FOI. So I was just wondering, do we know what the reasons for using that FOI were now that it is essentially in the public domain?
So my understanding that was that it was commercially sensitive at that time. It wasn't something that was to be treated in isolation from the rest of the work, and that's why it was refused. Now that we've completed this piece of work, we can now release that document and it will be published as soon as possible.
So there would be no problem with me sharing that report with the Community Council?
Absolutely not.
You mentioned McGill's there, and I just wanted to seek assurances that they are the main bus provider in Clackmannanshire. So have we engaged with them in relation to maybe how they could support these aspirations?
Yes, my understanding is that there's also been some political engagement with McGill's, but separately we did meet with McGill's very recently alongside Councillor Harrison. They were very supportive. They're really keen to build bridges with the community and to see what they can do to support, particularly that social isolation, getting people to employment and to health. So it was a very positive meeting and we are following that up.
Thank you. Councillor Eddleton, followed by Councillor Denny.
Yeah, thanks. I know from the paper there's they touch on a fare structure for the bus service going to use this year. Will the standard bus pass that's issued to disabled people and the old age pensioners, will the bus company honour these ones, or will it have to be a different agreement?
Stuart, are you happy to answer that question? So did you understand that?
Sorry, could you repeat that question? I didn't quite catch the phone.
That's yours also.
Yeah. My question was more about the bus passes that pensioners and the disabled people currently use on bus services. The report touches on a fare structure for the volunteer-led bus service. Will they be able to use the bus passes on this service? And if they do, who pays for it?
I'm honestly not sure. Honestly, I was involved in some of the detail of the plan's preparation, but it's a volunteer service, so I think the costs around it just need to be in order so that it wipes its feet, kind of thing. But I would be surprised if a bus pass like that the arrangement could be put in place such that bus passes could be utilised for that purpose. So I'd be surprised if that's not something we can accommodate.
Yeah, I know there are some who've been driving legitimately on the street to be possible, that's what No?
Sorry, are you able to pick up on the same question?
Yeah, I think I can answer a little bit that. So if you're referring to the volunteer driver scheme, currently it's in a pilot phase at the moment, but it's a donation-based service. So we are looking at how we can introduce a fair system for people who are able to pay for it. We're also exploring other funding options through the third sector that could help pay for donations for people that can't afford to pay for it. But at the moment, it's a donation scheme, so there is no cost to it if you can't afford to pay for it. We can certainly explore the option for using the bus passes as a way for that as well, but we're still in the pilot stages and it's quite early on at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rennie.
Thanks, Chair. I've got a few questions, if that's okay. So, first one being that obviously, I think it's an excellent paper. I think there's so much work into it, so thanks very much to everybody that's pulled that together. It's great to see. But in terms of the demand, I actually spoke to a community group just after the papers come out as well, so it's really useful to get some of their feedback. One of the things was that the demand responsive transport obviously will be scheduled and, different people need to use that transport. One of the questions was that the bus service at the moment is not very reliable, and they wondered if there was a last minute need that wasn't covered by the responsive transport, how that would be managed.
What we've tried to do is to start the beginnings of a framework where there will be different options available. So not everybody is going to be relying on one bit of that demand responsive transport. Maddie's referred to the volunteer driver scheme. And part of that will be to make sure that we can communicate that out to people so that they know, so that there are different options available. So for some people, it might not be easy to access certain parts of the framework or certain parts of the provision that's been built up over time. And for others, they'll only be able to, access, they'll have much more access to other parts of it. So I think that's what we're trying to do, Councillor, is to try and make sure that there are options. However, I would say that we do have to manage expectations here, and there won't be a system where we can just press a button and a car will arrive at everybody's door. It's just going to be, so it will be difficult to make sure that everybody gets, but we're trying to get it to a better position than we currently have, to the point where we have that broader range. We've already seen those number of people who are accessing the volunteer drivers who wouldn't have had access to that previously for short journeys or longer journeys. So it is that type of thing that we're trying to build up over time. Hope that answers your question.
Just the second question is in terms of the active travel. It was something that was discussed fully at the meeting I was at, where I understand the importance of active travel, but what the feedback I had from the group was that a lot of people on electric bikes, for example, are using them on paths and putting people in danger. And the police were having some challenges about tackling that because there wasn't overnight storage for those bikes. But also a lot of young people who have been sort of going about, and it's more of a question probably for the police, but a lot of young people who have been going about the roads. But I think that would kind of indicate that we're a wee bit behind with active travel and getting the right paths in place for the active travel network. And I just wondered how what was progressing with that.
I would say that, prior to me coming into post, the council relatively well known for a really comprehensive and excellent active travel route infrastructure. And in more recent years, we've extended a new route between Alva and Menstrie, and we have really ambitious plans to further develop the active travel network, because it's such an important piece of infrastructure that drives a range of benefits, mental health and well-being and the like, as well as for commuters and for leisure and travel. So we have ambitious plans. The action plan that's set out in the paper sits between the National Transport Strategy and our shortly to forthcome the local transport strategy and our active travel strategy, and that sets out our ambitions to develop the active travel infrastructure. All the while, our active travel project manager has a range of infrastructure improvements underway: accessibility, behaviour change, active travel zone maps at schools and engaging with schools, a range of different things, all to promote appropriate use of active travel routes and the active travel network. So I'd be quite confident to set that out in more detail, but I do think we are punching above our weight as far as active travel infrastructure is concerned. So that's a bit of a kind of plug, but I do think we are.
No, I agree. I mean, I've been along some of the travel routes, and the ones that are there are really, I'm not being negative, they are really good. But I think just in terms of, and you did touch on it there, is there going to be training for the community and the safe use of that kind of form of transport?
Yes, well, we already have engagement ongoing with their 3 active travel hubs, the main hubs that are in the secondary schools. And we have an engagement programme with the primary schools as well. That links in with road safety as well to try and encourage sustainable travel behaviour as opposed to people arriving with their kids in the car, as it were. So we've got a range of things going on at that granular level, at the community level, where I think it has as much value as providing £1.8 million worth of active travel routes, I think, because you're changing people's behaviour so that they more easily the training to use a bike, training to maintain a bike. This is all kind of part of the, as I say, active travel project manager is really ambitious to try and drive that level of integration and improvement. And I'm really obviously very much a supporter of that.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Thanks, Chair. Just with regards to door-to-door and special vehicles, for people with disabilities, etc. Also, taxis play a key role in that. And I was wondering if there's any plans to engage with the council's own taxi driver forum, which contains a lot of the licensed taxi drivers and operators in the area. And if there's anything that the regulatory committee could do, or licensing officers to tweak our processes that would help enhance the offerings and the supply of those vehicles.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one of the recommendations within the plan is about continuing and widening that steering group that we've used so far and inviting other partners into that, and taxis are very much a part of that. We do acknowledge that we need to ensure that everything is aligned and that we are not putting competition in for our taxi network, and making sure that we're complementing what is there and over and above.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Followed by Councillor Coyne.
Thanks. I was at a recent Clacks Access panel, and the users there were just wanting to kind of raise awareness and make sure that, you know, that any plans will, going forward, would take into account the use of non-folding wheelchairs and obviously the issues that they have getting transport. So I just wanted to make sure that that was kind of one of our priorities. Kind of going forward, they have also said that, you know, Self and Stuart were actually at the meeting, you know, if they could feed into any kind of process going forward in regards to the issues that they have accessing transport. Stuart was really helpful in regards to the issues that people have with getting on regular buses and the access to that for wheelchairs. So I just wanted to kind of, if there was reassurance for that group of users.
Yeah, absolutely. We've identified that as one of the high priorities for the first stage of the plan. But we recognise those challenges and we want to try and address those as best we possibly can. So reassurance provided.
Thank you, Councillor Coyne.
Thank you. DRT is, I've got a frog in the throat. DRT, we've agreed, I think, that the model isn't door to door in the sense that you're not getting picked up at your door. That means you're going to have some mini bus stops somewhere or things like that. And that's going to mean a lot of these around various communities. I mean, are the roads department or people who look after payments content with that kind of invasion of their space? I mean, has it been discussed with them? And also, just tacking along with that, I'm guessing that the taxi companies are what you see as the backbone of the DRT network, or do you see being additionally complemented by some other service? Embedded in that is, how do you strengthen taxi networks without competing? Because they're obviously they're commercial enterprises, and how do you see that being managed? So it's got a lot. consider.
So as we worked through the issues with the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, absolutely the issues around the roads network are part of the challenge, and it's part of that area that we need to address. So Kevin's team have been involved in some of those discussions and will work with us as we go forward to make sure that we address some of those in a realistic way, you know, that which is the same with all of this. You know, there is minimal resources in certain areas, and we have to try and maximise the resources that we have and leverage in additional. So that's the approach that we're taking. So in terms of roads, absolutely, they will be part of the plans going forward. I think Maddie's already said, I mean, what we're trying to do is to build up that framework so that actually we don't put anybody's nose out of joint, particularly, you know, the taxis or otherwise, and that's a challenge, isn't it? If you were just dealing with one individual bit, you could address that, but that's not sustainable, and that's where we started from, was recognising that the current approach that we do have of just looking at areas in isolation is not sustainable. So we're trying to build up that framework, and part of that is the demand responsive transport, making sure that you know, we do have multi-use vehicles, we do actually complement with volunteers and with a taxi network. So it's bringing that holistic approach to this, Councillor Coyne, I think, that we're trying to take. It's not easy, as I mentioned at the beginning, but the partnership working is crucial, and we're certainly seeing a lot of willingness and the partners who have come around the table to work with us and to try and address some of these issues. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thanks, it does. Can I now ask you to look at page 77? There's a paragraph there that says the shift from access to employment towards access to life, etc., etc. I'm hoping that's not 100% shift. It's bringing in access to life into access to employment. Access to employment is hugely important. Oh, sorry.
Yes, I mean, one of the reasons we worked with the Wellbeing Economy Alliance was to actually try to understand, you know, how do we get that framework again? Sorry for repeating myself, but people getting to jobs isn't in isolation of people's lives becoming better. So, you know, it's how you intertwine both of those, as well as recognise that there are people who need for medical and wellbeing appointments and use transport. So we're not saying that there's a hierarchy whatsoever, but employment and the links that Maddie has within the employment team, you know, we can make vehicles available for people to get to employment. I don't think everybody knows about that. And I think that's partly, you know, and for job interviews and things like that. So it's drawing all of that in a way, communication, so people understand that there are a range of supports out there to get to employment or to interviews, whatever. Equally, that supports the way that you access life.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thanks, Lorraine. Maddie and Stuart as well. Councillor Hamilton to move the paper.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I'm really pleased to see this paper coming forward. It is such an important issue across the county, and I thank the teams across the council directorates for their input into it. It is a really detailed report and the appendices as well. We are all acutely aware of the issues that our communities see daily with regards to transport. These issues vary across the council area, but do affect all communities. We all want to see improvements that will allow the residents of Clackmannanshire to be able to access public transport to get to work, ensure they can attend medical appointments, go shopping and socialise. We all know that access to reliable, affordable transport expands employment and training opportunities while encouraging social and leisure travel that combats isolation. This is the first step to building an implementation plan that will be developed based around the short, medium and long-term actions outlined in the paper. The wellbeing economy approach to transport strategy has been developed using data and examples from across Scotland, the UK and Europe, as well as engaging locally. The Council also recently commissioned consultants to review transport provision within Clackmannanshire, and this report directly incorporates recommendations from that Mott MacDonald report review of the transport provision, specifically their analysis on the demand responsive transport opportunities. This action plan shouldn't be seen as a repetition of the National Transport Strategy, nor is it a substitute for the forthcoming Local Transport Strategy. Rather, it should be seen as a link to the two of these. The National Strategy sets out goals for but the action plan then sets out how we are going to achieve those goals. The action plan will look at how we prioritise infrastructure maintenance in underserved areas, look to introduce affordable fares, expand multi-purpose demand responsive transport, ensure accessible, up-to-date transport-related information is available to everyone. Priority has been given to urgency of local needs, so the areas that we know are less served by transport provision. Evidence-based recommendations, I've already mentioned the McDonald report that has been looked at and taken into recognition in this report. Alignment with strategic priorities. This does align with the National Transport Strategy and Clackmannanshire's local outcomes improvement plan. Feasibility and resource efficiency, community stakeholder support, and what are the potential quick wins with demonstrable impact that we can show that will encourage further collaboration. The action plan contains 21 linked interventions over 3 phases. By setting out these short, medium and long-term actions, we will position Clackmannanshire to be a leader in demonstrating how rural and semi-rural areas can develop transport systems that serve broader wellbeing outcomes, and also creating a replicable model for other local authorities across Scotland. I really look forward to the detailed implementation plan coming forward in due course. While I have deliberately focused on the transport element of the paper, I'm happy to recognise the progress made on digital and data transformation, workforce strategy and the asset management strategy as well. I'm happy to move the paper.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Forson to second.
Thanks, Convener. The paper gives us both a strategic direction and practical steps towards a more sustainable, equitable and wellbeing centred transport system in Clackmannanshire. I don't think it just repeats national ambitions. I think it translates them into local actions shaped by evidence, community input and a forward-looking mindset. The key proposals that I particularly support include the adoption of the wellbeing economy approach to transport, which asks not just how do we move people, but how does mobility enhance people's lives, health, equity, connection and environment. The series of short-term actions over 3 years, such as a hubs-based demand-responsive transport model, better active travel infrastructure and expanded real-time passenger information systems. And these are all designed to deliver visible improvements quickly. And I think crucially for me, the recognition that transport does not operate in isolation. By embedding the cross-departmental, regional and community partnerships, we will build a more successful system. I think these proposals strike a balance. They are ambitious without being unrealistic. They build on existing resources and contracts while setting a framework for collaboration and innovation. And if we approve the paper today, we commit to developing a detailed implementation plan that sets out the required resources, milestones, responsibilities and evaluation metrics. And in doing so, we set the tone for Clackmannanshire to become a place where sustainable transport is not an afterthought, but an integral part of how we deliver opportunity, health, fairness and resilience for all our residents. So I second the recommendations and I look forward to seeing the work translated into action.
Okay, thank you. The paper is now open for debate. Anybody wish to debate? Paper, Councillor Rennie.
Yeah, I wanted an opportunity just to say how high quality I think this work has been. And I said that before. I think it's excellent. It's involved so much engagement, which is always really important, I think, to ensure that it meets needs of the community. I think transport is so important for our communities in so many different ways. For employment opportunities for young people and everybody, for people to be able to access education, for people to be able to access health, to reduce isolation. And one of the biggest things I see is the level of isolation that people are experiencing at the moment. So having that wellbeing economy approach, I think, is really important to look at the wellbeing of people in the area in relation to transport. I think it crosses everything. Every community that you look at say that transport's always their biggest barrier to engagement. So I just wanted the opportunity to commend this paper. Thanks to everybody involved in pulling it together, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes forward from it.
Thank you. Any other contributions to the debate? Councillor Coyne?
Yeah, just to echo that. I mean, this has been a long-awaited report. Communities like Muckert and my ward have been hanging on the edge of the table waiting for news of this. It's long-awaited, as I say, but it's worth waiting for, I guess. It's a very comprehensive, well-thought-out report, a huge amount of material in it, and I think it's an excellent first stage in revolutionising the way we approach transport in our county. Thank you.
Any others? Councillor Harrison, do you need the opportunity to sum up? No. Okay, so the paper asks us to approve the wellbeing economy approach to transport strategy as set out in Appendix 1, to approve the short-term actions set out in Appendix 2, and to further note that a more detailed implementation plan will be developed, setting out the resource and project detail. Also to note the key strategic highlights on Be the Future's top 3 priority themes. I'm happy to approve. Okay, thank you. So item 7 is the grant award to Clackmannanshire Family Support Collaborative, and Gillian's going to take us through this.
Thank you, convener. Good morning, councillors. The purpose of this paper is to update selected members on the development of the Family Support Collaborative and seek approval for the next phase of activity, including funding arrangements. The council is asked to approve the consolidation of funding from the existing core budget from the council and whole family wellbeing fund as a grant fund to the Family Support Collaborative, with Clackmannanshire Third Sector Interface being the administrator of the grant fund through the Family Support Collaborative. Council is asked to note that the arrangements will be implemented once grant agreements are finalised and signed. In terms of background to this, the council will be aware that over recent years, much work has taken place to develop collaborative and integrated models of working across the People Directorate and with other directorates. The development of this collaborative partnership model was made possible due to the context set through the Be the Future Transformation Programme and activities such as the Values-Based Leadership Programme delivered through the Family Wellbeing Partnership. In keeping with this approach, the Family Support Collaborative is a partnership between the council, local families and third sector organisations. It reflects the council's commitment under the promise to provide accessible, timely and sustained whole family support for families. The collaborative works alongside projects such as Community Around the School and the Child Wellbeing Partnership. The family support hubs developed have benefited from the addition of a Family Wellbeing Partnership funded community connector who works to support families to access appropriate community supports. To date, the Family Support Collaborative have developed family support hubs, delivered an information exchange focused on family support, and awarded family-led grant funding from Whole Family Wellbeing Fund and Family Wellbeing Partnership funding. The next phase of development involves the co-design of services with children, young people and families, empowering them to influence funding decisions and service priorities. This approach aims to create flexible, responsive services and strengthen community involvement in public service delivery. The approach proposes a change to the administration of the current model of funding, which would mean awarding grant funding to the Family Support Collaborative via Clackmannanshire Third Sector Interface as the administrator. This funding combines the Whole Family Wellbeing Fund, Children's Services Core Council funding, currently delivered to commission services through grant contracts. This would provide whole family support services across a range of needs. A delivery leads group involving council officers, third sector and community representation will oversee implementation and ensure outcomes are met. Robust legal agreements have been developed to underpin this grant and onward distribution should the council approve this request. The total sums involved are detailed in page 154 of paragraph 3.14. And in summary, the council is asked to approve the consolidation of that funding and delivery through the Clackmannanshire Third Sector Interface on behalf of the collaborative. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. People's now open to questions. Anybody, Councillor Coyne?
Thanks, Gillian. Hello. I'm guessing you referred to 3.14 there. The fact that the core council funding is 50% is because we're 50% way through the year. Yeah. Okay. What's the kind of monitoring procedure going to be? Could have watched this process. A lot of money going into that, and what procedures in place for monitoring the effectiveness?
So in preparation for this, we've developed a framework for the monitoring of it, which involves several KPIs that are aligned to our community wellbeing plan. The successful applicants for funding will have to report quarterly via CTSI to ourselves, and I will in turn report that through our community wellbeing plan reports at 2 points throughout the year. So far, all of the partners who are involved with this are used to a level of scrutiny around their funding, and are experienced in providing robust outcomes information. So I'm confident that we'll continue to receive that. In addition, the Whole Family Wellbeing Fund has a separate reporting mechanism to the Scottish Government. I have to supply, or the Council supplies, an annual return regarding the outcomes from that. So similarly, that has got a logic model and key outcomes that we need to deliver on.
So you will be advising them of how to report and what you want reported. You're not just relying on them saying, here's our half monthly, half yearly report. You'll be telling them this is what we want. Yeah, okay.
We've got a framework with targets and key performance indicators, so they will report directly in line with what we're asking them to deliver.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Martin.
These are the questions asked earlier on in the week, but the key performance indicators, could you give us an example of some of these so that we know what you're looking at?
So the key, for instance, if I focus on the Whole Family Wellbeing Fund, members will be aware that that is a fund, specific purpose of which is to support family support, which underpins promises commitment to reduce the numbers of children who have to be looked after away from their families. So some of the KPIs that we would expect to see reports on relate to a reduction in the number of children who are looked after out with their families, a reduction in the number of children who have to become subject to statutory measures. And alongside that, we would look to see elements such as increased support to kinship carers and increased support to families in crisis. There are KPIs related to those. There are also, at the other end of the scale, KPIs that relate to the shift towards early intervention and sustainability of services. So, for instance, there are monitoring agreements. It's not a specific KPI, but we ask about the numbers and range of group work programmes. There are KPIs about people being able to access services directly rather than through referral routes. There's some examples. If it helps, I can.
No, that's fine. Thank you. That gives us an indication of what's going to be happening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McTaggart before the Councillor Law.
Thanks, convener. Similarly to Councillor Martin, I'm thinking, will the KPIs be along an outcome-based route? So we're not just looking for ticking boxes or moving numbers about. We're actually looking at the outcomes for people and what we want to achieve, where their base mark is, and how we want them to grow and what the outcome will be. Will we also be linking with the Strive team on delivering these outcomes? And I'm bit confused about the way the money is distributed, no the money itself. But if we currently have strategic partners, and we maybe notice that we've got a bit of a gap in the service delivery, there's a particular area that we want to concentrate on that we've identified as crucial. How would we determine, are there other partners there? How would we engage with their partners, and how would the partners engage with us to access that financial framework? Thanks.
Thank you. I'll take them one at a time. In terms of the outcomes, yes, the framework is outcomes focused. the KPIs specifically that we're asking them to deliver on, some of them by nature need to be numbers rather than outcomes. But across our framework, there's a range of those. What we have done is also written them into the grant process. So if the council agrees to go ahead today, the legal documentation that sits behind that grant will be very clear that these are legally binding and must be delivered. In terms of Strive, yes. So you'll have seen in the paper that I've mentioned a community connector. There are two community connectors. One's aligned to the family support side of our delivery, and the other is Strive. The two of them are both cited within CTSI, work closely with us, and Strive is an integral part of one of our ranges of family support provision that comes through this. In terms of distribution, the example you give is a good one that I see as a benefit of this model. So at the moment, if we identified a gap in service, we would have to go through a commissioning and procurement process. I'd allocate a specific set of funding to that and set up a competitive process to be able to award a contract. By moving this funding over to CTSI and asking them to administer it, what I would expect to see happen is the full family support collaborative. So we meet quarterly, and there are around 60 organisations who are routinely attending, and part of that would all be informed of the gaps that we see. We are deliberately aiming to leave some flexibility in the funding to allow them to say, us to be able to say, right, we see this gap, and we would like to hear from you. How would you deliver that? We have a brief online form that can be completed, and then we would go back to the family members and the key delivery leads to look at how would we take that forward, or which we would take forward.
Thanks. Thinking along the lines of self-directed support, I'm just wondering how self-directed support could link into this and enhance that funding, because especially around kinship care or foster care, because obviously individuals might be entitled to self-directed support, and how that would sort of align with what we are offering.
So I suppose the budget for self-directed support sits separately from this funding. The process of being awarded self-directed support happens on a very individual basis. We have, however, had families coming in through the hubs who are looking for support that would actually be best met through self-directed support. And part of the role of the hubs is to redirect those people, make the links. We have some short representation, obviously, at the hubs to be able to say, this is how you would go about accessing budget for self-directed support. Does that answer the question?
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Law.
It's been answered. It was just about qualitative data as well as quantitative data, so it's okay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Klein, do you want to come back in?
Yes, thanks, Convener. Julian, this may represent, or you tell me, this represents a significant increase in the workload throughput for CTSI, I'm guessing. Maybe not. But if it does, have you carried out any kind of stress testing of CTSI to see whether they have got the infrastructure to cope with this?
So the answer to that is I'm not aware if CTSI have carried out any stress testing. They have taken this to their board and sought approval to go ahead with it and been granted that. They have also received Robertson Trust funding that is supporting a family support collaborative coordinator role, whose role will be managing the administration of the collaborative and the team. So there is some additionality that's come to CTSI that we are not funding that would support that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, my concern, anything to do with voluntary sector, is contingent upon a lot of human nature rather than just resources and a plan. And this is largely a voluntary sector. I think that we're entrusting this job to. So That's really where my concern, it's not a concern, it's the question is saying, are we happy that they can cope with it? You obviously are happy that they can cope with it.
I'm content that they can cope with it. I agree that we are placing a lot of responsibility on CTSI, but we do work very much in partnership with them. And if they were to be experiencing difficulties with that, I have no hesitation in saying that we would know about that and would seek to support them with that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rennie.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you to give me figures, but I would presume from the work that we're doing here, it might look like a substantial amount of money, but I would think on the savings that could go forward in terms of particularly when you were talking about children being looked after away from home, you know, all the additional costs of family support that would have to be there. I would imagine this amount of funding that we are approving is a drop in the ocean compared to what could be saved by preventative approaches. But I'll not put you in the spot and say, tell me how much, but like, you know, I would imagine that would be the case. Is that correct?
Absolutely, that's the case. Our whole family wellbeing fund, our total allocation for whole family wellbeing fund would only cover, for instance, around 2 external residential placements. And we've reduced them by 8 this year, so yes.
I was going to give me some sort of figure, which is great, thank you.
Are you, Councillor Rennie? Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Julian. Councillor Lawton, with the paper.
I was thinking I'm happy it's collaborative, although I struggle with that. It's collaboration, which earlier came up. I'm glad it's not that. So bear with me. Hopefully I'll be able to say it without stumbling. I'm pleased to speak in support of the proposed grant funding for the Family Support Collaborative. This is a vital next step in strengthening support for families across Clackmannanshire. This proposal consolidates existing council and whole family wellbeing fund resources into a single grant administered by CTSI to streamline funding and bring decision making closer to the community. It reflects our commitment under the promise and aligns with our Be the Future transformation programme. The collaborative has already shown strong results in integrating services and empowering families and reducing duplication. Next phase will deepen community involvement, allowing those with lived experience to shape services and funding priorities. This approach will not only improve outcomes but also responds to financial challenges by investing in early intervention and reducing reliance on intensive services. I urge the Council to continue to support for the collaborative. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay, second.
Yeah, just what she said. No, I think particularly the last two papers, I think really reinforce the council's approach really to collaboration overall. You know, the last paper was really about collaboration really within departments and how successful that has been in terms of pulling that body of work together, and obviously working with people out there. This collaboration within this particular paper is really focused on how we work with people to make sure we design services and operate in a way that works best for them. I think the questioning was really helpful there, drawing out some of the potential risks, potential challenges, which have clearly been identified and worked on with officers. Certainly, you know, the connect with CTSI is a good one, is a strong one. Agreed. I think we would hear if there was any issues around that outlined. So, but again, good questions, and I think we need to be absolutely certain that we're confident when we're given such responsibility to third sector partners that we've got that ability to cope with it. I'm pleased also just to hear in relation to that the framework, the robust legal framework that's in place, the reporting mechanisms around that as well, and to get an in-depth understanding of what those look like, and how we'll be measuring the success, and how you know, our people will have a better experience. Councillor Rennie talked about hopefully the benefits, and we're already seeing the benefits in terms of savings that are coming through. It's not about saving cash, but if we can see that outcome coming through in the work that we do and the early intervention that we do, then that's certainly an outcome that we'd want to welcome on the back of that, but it's certainly about getting our services and getting it right for people and making sure that their voices are heard and they're very much at the centre of organising these services. So as Councillor Laws outlined, it aligns to our the future priorities, particularly those in relation to empowering families and communities and health and wellbeing, and overall the reporting back into the wellbeing Lloyd will be critical to that as well. So happy to support the paper on that basis.
Okay, thank you. Paper's now open for debate. Anyone wishes to debate? Councillor Rennie?
Yeah, I just feel strongly about this paper. I've said since I started, said since I started in council that I think engagement with the third sector is really important, and I've got a slightly different perspective than Councillor Coyne, because having been in the third sector for 30 years, I think we always do more with less, and we always do it really well, and we always have to jump through about 40 evaluation hoops to be able to do it. So you know, we are actually held to a higher standard than anybody else, so we are very clear on our perspectives on that. But I think I mentioned the financial side, as Councillor Lindsay said, but I think what's really important here is I worked in a service that worked with young people who'd been raised in care, and that is something that has a significant impact on everybody. Not so much in the kinship care side, but in the kind of children who are looked after in other ways. It has a really serious impact on their long-term outcomes, and that's recognised within the promise. So we can stop just one person going into a care setting. I think it's worth every penny, and I think that's why this is so important. And I think the importance of the work with CTSI is they know the third sector really well, but they also know the community. So they've got a lot of engagement with lived experience, and they have a lot of engagement with families who may be involved in this. So I think it's an excellent, I was delighted to see this paper. I think it's excellent, and I think it will help in the long term for outcomes for children in Clackmannanshire.
Thank you. Councillor Martin?
Yeah, I'll not repeat everything that Rennie says, but yeah, I think potentially this is a big step forward for collaborative work in Clackmannanshire, and it isn't all about the savings, it's about the angst that you can lift off families that are under terrible stress. And we need to make things the least complex and complicated for families to get help. And this, to me, this is a good step along the way. But also this is a step toward real, how can I put it, real meaningful universal response that we've aspired to for years and years, but haven't managed to get there. Everybody's pulled in here, and many of them we've worked with for years. But I think when you kind of give people ownership of something, that always improves things, you know. So yeah, I think it's an excellent paper. A lot of hard work done in it, and I'm sure there'll be new ways of working will emerge from this as well, that, you know, maybe can pass on to other services. Yeah, it's a good paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other contributions to the debate? Councillor, do you need the opportunity to sum up? No. Okay, so the paper asks us to approve the consolidation of funding from the existing council core budget, the whole family wellbeing fund, as a grant fund to the Family Support Collaborative, and CTSI being the administrator of the grant fund through the Family Support Collaborative. Council is also asked to note that arrangements will be implemented once the grant arrangements are finalised and signed. We're happy to approve. Okay, thank you. Item 8 is the governance and decision making exit packages. Chris, will you take us through it?
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, councillors. The paper as presented outlines the findings of the Accounts Commission's scrutiny of senior officer exit packages at Glasgow City Council, and for assurance, it also provides details on the current governance arrangements and policies for Clackmannanshire Council. The paper asks Council to note the Council's current approach for the approval of early retirements, note that internal audit will undertake a review of early retirements, voluntary severance, voluntary redundancy decisions for senior staff, as part of its 26-27 programme cycle. Approve that existing approaches to early retirement decisions remain as current, and approve that an annual report detailing the number of early retirements, voluntary severances and flexible retirements approved during the previous financial year be presented to the Audit and Scrutiny Committee on an annual basis for full scrutiny and review. As outlined in the paper and the accompanying appendices, the Controller of Audit raised serious concerns about governance and transparency of decision-making around senior officer exit packages at Glasgow City Council. The Controller of Audit outlines that the decisions of members and officers should uphold the 9 key principles of public life in Scotland. And as such, when decisions around restructuring and exit packages are being taken, councils must demonstrate clear evidence of effective governance, independent scrutiny, value for money, and robust and transparent record keeping. Clackmannanshire Council has in place a number of policies reviewed and approved by Council which relate to organisational redesign, severance, retirement and pension discretions. These policies are the organisational change protocols which were approved in 2020, our severance policy approved in 2021, our discretionary functions policy approved in 2015 and amended in 2018, our flexible retirement policy approved in 2021, our financial regulations and our scheme of delegation which is currently under review. There are no separate policies for senior staff. In relation to early retirement, the Council will not, as a matter of course, waive in whole or part any reduction that would be applied, and as such, any early penalty payment, also known as an actuarial reduction, is met by the individual staff member. In relation to flexible retirement, any such requests are only approved when there is no strain cost to the Council. The proposed reduction in grade or hours aligns with the Council's policy, and that the revised salary and pension payment do not exceed the pre-retirement salary. All voluntary severance or voluntary redundancy packages are considered by the Council's clearinghouse, which comprises the Chief Executive and the Section 95 officer, who are supported by the Senior Manager, HR and Workforce Development. And the approval of any package is in line with the Council's approved policy and provisions. I'm happy to take any members we have ahead of the paper being moved.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Do we have any questions? No questions? Very much. Thanks, Chris. Councillor Forson to move.
Yep, the paper comes directly in response to concerns raised by the Accounts Commission about how senior officers' exit packages were handled in Glasgow Council. And whilst that was not here in Clackmannanshire, the lesson is very clear that every council must examine its own practices to ensure transparency, accountability and public trust. At present, I do think we have sound policies in place, but there are gaps. In particular, there is no regular reporting to members on the number or cost of early retirements and severances, and internal audit has not yet reviewed senior staff exit decisions, and I think that's a risk that we should address. The recommendations before us strike the right balance. They keep operational decisions where there is no cost to the Council with officers, but add safeguards, which are an annual report audit and scrutiny on all early retirements, severances and flexible retirements with costs and savings set out, and updates to the scheme of delegation and committee remits to clarify responsibilities and reduce the risk of conflicts of interest, and also a commitment that internal audit will review senior exit decisions as part of the 26-27 programme. I think these changes strengthen oversight, protect the public purse and show our community that decisions at the top of this council are subject to the same rigour we would expect anywhere else. I don't think it's about creating unnecessary bureaucracy. It's about embedding good governance, consistency and transparency. And in short, it ensures that we learn lessons now and not after a problem arises. And for those reasons, I move the recommendations set out in the report.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton to second.
Thanks, Convener. I'm pleased to second this report and its recommendations. It presents a measured and constructive response to the Accounts Commission's findings on governance and transparency around exit packages. Clackmannanshire Council already has clear policies in place, particularly when no cost is incurred, but I welcome the additional assurance measures proposed. The inclusion of a future internal audit review and the introduction of annual reporting to the Audit and Scrutiny Committee are both proportionate and practical. They reinforce our commitment to transparency and good governance while respecting the operational framework already in place.
Thank you. It's now open for debate. Anybody wish to debate the paper? No. So the paper asks us to note that in accordance with Clackmannanshire Council's approved discretionary policy, early retirement is only authorised where there is no financial cost to the council. In such cases, any actuarial reduction is borne by the individual staff members. We're asked to note that internal audit will add a review of early retirements and voluntary severance redundancy decisions for senior staff to its programme of review for the 26-27 cycle. And we're asked to approve that while the Controller of Audit's report recommends elected member involvement in early retirement decisions, Clackmannanshire Council's approach, where no cost is incurred, supports this remaining as an operational decision consistent with the existing approval process outlined in the discretionary policy. Further asked to approve that an annual report be submitted to the Audit and Scrutiny Committee detailing the number of early retirements, voluntary severances and flexible retirements that are approved during the previous financial year, including associated costs and savings. We're happy to approve the paper. Thank you. Colleagues, we're going to take a quick comfort break. If we go back for 22. Thank you.